Hey, what's up, guys? Chad Hermansen here with Mental Edge Training Coach. Today, I'm going to be chatting with my former teammates, Taylor Myers. Taylor was a second-round draft pick by the Kansas City Royals in the '96 draft. Today, we're going to touch on injuries. He had some major injuries with his arm, so we're going to talk about how he was used from Little League all the way up through high school and in pro ball, and how that affected him and how he might be able to, with his advice, give you some tips and ideas on how to handle things if your son's a pitcher. So enjoy this conversation with Taylor Myers. All right, Taylor, what's going on, man? How's it going today?
How are you, Chad? Good to see you.
Good to see you too, man. It's been a few years. I think the last time we saw each other, we were inducted into the Green Valley Hall of Fame together.
Right. I knew I'd make it into something. All that work.
we some huge accomplishments we got. We got our high school Hall of Fame. So Taylor and I were former Little League teammates all the way back to when we were 13. Played in high school together. Taylor's a year younger than me. I think we're about the same age, but roughly like you and Nick Day, or we're close to the same age, but I could have been in your grade, basically. But, I was very advanced as a 5-year-old. So I
You were the only guy that had a full beard when we were 12.
Yeah. So I had to, start shaving then. And my mom at 5 was like, I got to get this kid out of the house. Like, there's no way he's staying. He's going to preschool early. Let's get him out of here. Yeah. So Taylor, I've told you before, I've had you on my list because it's a long list of players, and I've kind of wanted to bring you in today to talk about not only your career and kind of what you went through, but you went through some significant injuries as a pitcher. So I want to dive though all the way back to like Little League days, because I want to talk about, you were always one of our top pitchers, right? And I feel like you were almost at a young age overused. When you look back at it now, how would you describe your Little League, really your amateur days, with being overused, if you think you are or were?
Well, I would consider myself the top pitcher, not one of the top pitchers. I'm kidding.
Let me start over. The top pitcher.
I'm totally kidding. I'm kidding. Oh, yeah. I mean, yes, I started pitching. First of all, I started pitching at the age of 6. And I was one of the kids that could throw the ball straighter than the other kids. So obviously I was going to get used more than everybody else. And, and back in that time, I don't think that people really understood the significance, the trauma that's done on an arm that young, which actually, I will say this, concerns me about kids these days. And I mean, you're a professional scout, and so I'm sure you see this a lot, but I mean, a lot of the parents are pushing kids to be something that they shouldn't be at 10 to 12 years old. And I understand that it's competitive, but I think that with the amount of Tommy Johns we're seeing and the amount of arm injuries we're seeing as kids get older, it probably starts when they're right around 12, 13 years old, because the parents just want to push their kids so hard. So, I don't really think my parents did that to me, but I definitely did get used more than most. And I mean, I think the rules back then were you were allowed to throw 2 full games a week. If you think about that, I mean, that's big leaguers barely do that.
And that's why you threw every game.
That's why I threw.
You were that guy.
Right. I had good stats simply because I just threw all the time. So no, I was definitely used too much. I started throwing a curveball at 11 years old, which I know that, man, kids these days are doing that even earlier than 11 years old, which is concerning. And then as we went into college, into high school, and then all of the all-star baseball we would play, and you and I didn't even play half as much as the way the kids do now. Mm-hmm. And I was still the same thing, being pitched as much. I'll open a series if we're in a tournament, and I'd usually have to close the series in a tournament, or then come into relief a couple times in between. And that definitely had an impact on my arm. And the problem is, Chad, it's like, because I've been asked this a few times, it's hard to determine if you're hurt or if you're sore, because you're going to have to pitch when you're sore. I mean, it's rare when you feel good, perfect. Right. But I think that it's better to err on the side of holding back than to keep pitching when you're sore. And I think that I did that a lot. And I think some of the coaches that we had, although they were great coaches and, they wanted to win, they definitely left that decision up to me. And I was always one to say, yes, I'll just keep pitching. And so that definitely had an impact on my arm. And, as I got older, when those injuries did happen, my personality, and I think any competitive kid that wants to move on, was that more is better on rehab. More working out is better. Go harder. Push the pain away. And that definitely had a huge impact on the health of my arm. So I mean, that's it in a nutshell as far as in my early years. But I definitely pitched too much.
Yeah. So I remember, man, you kind of have images in your mind. I think back to like the playoffs or really important games in high school. Like it seemed like you were always there. Like around my senior, junior year, like Taylor was always in those big games. Like you said, either starting or you didn't start and you had to come in and close it, and you always did the job. So you were still rewarded out of high school with being a high draft pick. Tell us about how the draft went for you, and what did the college coaches see in you? Or excuse me, the scouts see in you.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, okay, so, those that don't know me, which are a lot of people, I'm 5'10", 175, 180 pounds. We do see a lot of guys in the big leagues pitching at that size, and they have good arms. I was kind of in that I threw in the mid to low 90s as a high school pitcher with great control. So I did catch the attention of quite a few scouts, college and professionals. Drafted in the second round, as you know, with Kansas City in 1996. I remember specifically pitching 7 innings one night against Gorman in the state championship, and then coming in the next night and finishing off 4 more innings. And I mean, over a 24-hour period, that was, I don't know, over, including warm-ups, that's over 250 pitches. You know what I mean? With warm-ups, bullpen, just all that kind of stuff. And I don't really put any blame on the coaches for that because I was a competitor, and I remember coming to practice again on Monday, because that was a Friday. We took Saturday, Sunday off, and came Monday, and my elbow was just barking, and of course my mentality at that time was just throw through it, throw the pain out. And that stuck with me all the way into professional baseball. And so my first season, I couldn't pitch. I pitched 1 game my first season in 1996 in short season A, and I had to sit out the rest of the year. And I think that if I would have been a little more mature and listened to some of the people that came before me on taking it back a notch and not pushing through the pain, I think that I might have had a longer career or a shot. Because once you damage your arm, it's never really the same again. Yes, you're going to work it out and you're going to be strong, but it's, especially shoulder injuries, you're really going to have an issue. Mine wasn't a shoulder injury out of the gate, but that's where it starts. The shoulder gets tired, and then the elbow takes the brunt of it, and then the elbow gives. And so that's what happened with me. So anyways, I got drafted, and I felt sore. And Kansas City did a thorough exam on me, and nothing was torn. But I also didn't tell them the pain that I was having because I was just used to throwing through pain. So fast forward into 1998, that's when I actually had the Tommy John surgery. And the year prior, 1997, I had a great year. That was my best year in professional baseball. But the problem was I pitched with a hurt elbow all year. So my shoulder just took a beating that whole year. And then when my arm did get healthy after Tommy John, I remember pitching against the Yankees in spring training, and I could let it go. But my shoulder had taken so much trauma that it popped 3rd game in. My labrum popped. And so, which led me down to 3 more shoulder surgeries.
One of 3.
Yeah, 1 of 3 and Tommy John's. This is wonderful. Yeah.
So when I work with athletes now, and I'm sure you, because you still work with athletes, I think with your kid, and if you're around the little league scene, club scene, kids get hurt. Like we all get hurt at some point. If you go and play this game without pulling a muscle or straining something, like you're lucky that that actually happens to you. What is your, so when you went through your rehab, what was that like from you from a mental standpoint? How did you get through those tough times?
So I've always heard this saying that, the most lonely place for any athletes when they're hurt. You're in the training room. Nobody wants to be in there with you. Nobody really wants to hang around the guy that's hurt. I don't blame him because there's a little superstition there, and you can't get better when you're hurt. You can't master your craft. So it's very, it's easy to get depressed. It's easy to get negative. I actually went through a lot of that, just being the mental battle of trying to stay positive was extremely difficult. And one thing I wish I would have done is not go so hard with my rehab in terms of, do what your trainers tell you to do. Listen to people that have been there before, and you gotta hold yourself back if you have that type of mentality. And that's the type of mentality I had, was to just do more. I would go from the training room doing my band workouts, and I'd go into the hotel, do them again, because I'm thinking, hey, the more I do, the healthier I'm going to get and the stronger I'm going to be. And that was not the case. But, and that's something that young guys, that's a real typical, immature thing to do. You don't know any better. So the guys that can listen to the guys that came before them and listen to their trainers are going to have a better outcome.
Did you ever reach out to any of those older, because there's usually a group, right? There's never just one guy that's going through rehab. Did you ever reach out to them, or were you just kind of like, I have a goal here, I'm going to get back in 10 months, and if I can do double the work, is what it sounds like, I'm going to get back in 6 months? Was that kind of your mindset going into that?
It was, man. I would talk to some of the, I remember a guy by the name of Hippolito Pichardo. He pitched in the big one. He was down there rehabbing. And Mitch Williams, you remember him? He was down there rehabbing. They went to Kansas City at the time. And they were both telling me, hey, man, you really need to you need to scale it back. You're doing too much. And I was just so gung-ho about, being the best I can, that I didn't listen to that. And I just kept doing more. So, I hope that, the takeaway here for kids is that more is not better. Sometimes less is more, because what they've studied this over, years and years and years. They know what works for each body.
Mm-hmm.
So
no doubt. It's interesting. And even from a hitter's standpoint, it's really easy. Like you use the term mastering your craft. For hitters, we go in, we go do cage work, right? We do tee work, soft toss. There's maybe some goal that says I need to take this amount of swings per day. And as you get older, you start to realize, maybe because you're better and you have a better idea, a better plan of what you're doing, you realize I don't need 500-600 swings a day. I need maybe 50 or 100. And so in my personal experience, I had labrum surgery. I went through that. I came back pretty quickly. I was like, man, I was throwing in like less than 2 months, which was like, is this normal? Like, should I even be throwing? Like, I can do this. If I can do that, I could probably throw. And talking to other people, like, yeah, you probably should have at least doubled your wait time to throw, right? From a hitter standpoint, my right foot, like as you kind of turn and you turn your body and you rotate to swing, I have pins in my right toe that at some point, like I just couldn't even hardly walk. Whether I don't know if it's called turf toe, there's something in there within the ligaments and joints that, like, dude, you need pins in there to hold this thing together because your toes wearing out, right? So just little things like that. But so you have 3 total surgeries.
I've had Tommy John. So, and what they did was they did a graft off my left Achilles tendon and created a new UCL, the ulnar collateral ligament. And then I had a labral surgery, and then I had 2 rotator cuff surgeries because I had fraying. I didn't have any tears. I had fraying, and then I actually had a surgery done that they don't even do anymore called capsule shrinkage. So they would actually take a heat probe and they would shrink the capsule, and then, they found out very quickly that the success rate on that was like under 30%. So, I got unlucky there, but but I guess the moral of the story is is that I think that just kids throw too much. They play baseball too much these days. And I know that's not what this is about, but I
That's
think
part
that
of it for sure.
it really is. I think,
Yeah.
I know, I just think that kids and parents are pushing their kids too much. And I understand the desire to see your kids succeed, but I mean, you really are the body can only take so much. And by the way, everyone has a limit on how many times they're going to throw, you know.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, look at Greg Maddux. I mean, that guy's never had one surgery. I mean, he didn't work out that much. He probably did just what he needed to do. And he threw over 250 innings for 20 years. So, a lot of it's just genetics. I mean, the guy's a freak. It's like, there's a lot of genetics that come into play. But, I probably could have prolonged my game, could have been prolonged maybe 7-8 years, which could have been a game changer for me. Who knows?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it's interesting too, like looking at it on the scout side, people ask me about, well, what do you guys look for like in a starting pitcher? Typically when we're drafting pitchers out of high school, we're looking for potential starters, right? What does that starter look like? Well, ideally they all look like Justin Verlander, right? 6'5", 200 pounds now, maybe they're going to get to 230, just big, strong guys. Why is that? Because they're able to handle that load that they put on the arm and the shoulder and the body. So pitcher, like the guy that comes to my mind around your size is Tim Lincecum.
Oh yeah.
Right? Around 5'10", 5'11", 180 pounds, great athlete, can do some amazing things, but there's, a shelf life there. There's
Absolutely.
just like all of us, right? All the pitchers in general. But when parents are asking, like, what are you guys looking for? Like, yeah, that's ideal. Like we want the big hairy guy. Yeah. And obviously each team, every team's different in that regard, but it's interesting. So tell us a little bit more about your playing career. How long did that last? And was it ultimately the injuries that made you stop playing?
Oh yeah, for sure. So I got drafted in 1996 and officially retired in 2002. 1997 was my best year, but I was hurt, so I still wonder. And I was only topping out probably 91, 92, 93 maybe. And so that was one of my better years, but I was able to locate really well. I had 3 good pitches, an average fastball plus changeup plus curve. Everything I threw was a 2-seamer, which helped me out as I had some movement. But a lot of the last years were spent rehabbing, which was some very humbling and very tough years, and I think that every athlete's going to go through that at some point. And it may not be injuries. It may be just like you realize that your skills have just kind of plateaued or it is injuries. And so, part of being hurt is also part of growing up too, when you're coming into any professional sport. And not that this needs to be about that exactly, but that is definitely something that that you can't get away from. But I will tell you this much, going through the rehab actually made me a lot stronger person, and I learned a lot. And I'm just one story that didn't make it. I know a lot of guys that have had multiple Walker Buehler has had 2 Tommy Johns from what I understand. And that guy, I watched him the other night, I think he was hitting 101.
Yeah.
Starting pitcher. So, I mean, but I bet you that kid listens to his trainers, and and I'm sure he doesn't do too much. So I guess the point is with that statement is to really like listen to your body, listen to your trainers. Don't try to do too much, because there's a good chance you will make it.
Yeah.
Back.
Yeah. You mentioned earlier about kids might be playing too much. When I look at kids that are around, like we're seeing club teams start at around 8 years old, 8U, 9U, 10U. Now, I'm okay with that, but I'm also, there's something there where they're practicing 4 days a week, and doing, why do we need to be practicing at 8, 9, 10 years old 4 days a week?
Well, I'll tell you this much. I'll tell you what is different than when you and I played is I think the competition's a little bit better because there are more kids playing. You know what I mean? There's more athletes playing baseball. I mean, the money and the success in Major League Baseball has made the sport grow. So I understand that. I understand that mentality from parents. But the body can only take so much, you know. I mean, and it's how many times I remember in high school there was two kids, Ben Sheese and another guy that probably were some of the better athletes I've ever seen, and they're, you know, Danny Tanner, they're gosh, their parents pushed them pretty hard from what I understand. I don't know, but neither one of them, they both burnt out, you know. So that's fear. You know, I hate to see kids do that. Baseball's supposed to be fun,
Right.
You know,
Right.
be a job from 8 to 13 years old.
Yeah.
So, but I also get it's hard, man. College scholarships and being a professional baseball player require you to be pretty damn good.
Yeah. Well, too, I think part of that is, you know, they want to get to where, because it's happening, if they're getting that scholarship pretty early, you know, if some of these colleges are willing to give scholarships as early as 8th, 9th, and 10th grade, when we really don't truly know what kind of player they are yet, that process has been sped up. So I'm just seeing that a lot too. If they're starting at a young age of 9, 10, 11, and they're heavily practicing, especially in particular the pitchers, right? Because they might be playing on a club team. A lot of them are still playing little league up until about 12 years old. So then you're talking about back to what you did, really pitching 2 days a week. You know, and if you're doing that 9, 10 months out of the year, that's going to catch up to you. Hope we lose you.
Yo,
there you are. Frozen on you. Nice. So now you, after you retired, you started to dabble a little bit in some local baseball. Is that right?
I did, yes.
Tell us about that.
Yeah, that was not fun. So one thing I've learned that there's a reason why spring training is spring training. From what I understand, I'm in the medical field now, medical device sales, not a doctor. But I do work with a lot of orthopedic surgeons. And what I've learned is that your bones actually layer over the more they're stressed. So they actually get thicker and calcify and become stronger the more you throw over a period of time. So what I did was I went and played in a pickup game and thought to myself, you know what, hey, if I tear my rotator cuff a little bit, so what? I just want to have some fun. I've already torn it anyways. What's the difference? Well, what ended up happening was I only know one speed out there. It's really hard to get out there in the heat of the moment and not compete. So I tried to snap a curveball off, and I was probably 60 pitches deep into this game, and my body, you can work out, but it's not the same as throwing shape. And I actually had a spiral fracture of my humerus bone, which caused the radial nerve to get twisted and caused me to lose some motion in my right hand. That's a freak accident. That only happens literally 2 to 300,000 pitchers. So it's not something that a person would need to worry about. But point is that just going out there and letting it rip is not a good idea because there's a reason why there's a process to build up and throw by throwing and exercising, not just getting it done. Those guys, when they get to, as a matter of fact, with those guys, when they get to spring training, they've already done several weeks, months of throwing. So, and there's a purpose for that.
Yeah. And I remember when I heard about that, and when you, from the outside in, you're like, dude, did you hear about Taylor? I'm like, what? He's like, yeah, he's pitching at a game and he broke his arm.
Yeah.
Basically. And I'm like, so when you see those things there's been a few in the big leagues that, you know, we're able to see, and you throw the pitch, you're like, oh, I'm assuming, were you screaming in pain? Was it just horrendous?
Well, you know, Russ Cleveland was on the team and he was catching, and I think he swallowed his chew, which I'm not a tobacco user, but he's swallowed his chew, and it was kind of a gruesome scene. Yeah, it wasn't nice. You could hear the bone crack like a tree branch, and the ball actually flew over. You know, I'm a right-hander, so the ball flew over into the third base dugout because when it was meant to go towards home plate, obviously.
Yeah.
And and it threw me to the ground. And typically, when the bones break, from what I understand, you know, there's some pathology there that is not good. So there's cancer, there's a tumor, or something like that in your bone. But that wasn't the case with me. I just put too much torque on the bone, and it wasn't strong. It wasn't used to throwing.
Yeah.
It was not a fun thing. I mean, I hate to even talk about that because I don't want kids, like my own kids, are scared that that might happen to them. One of my guys, it's not going to happen.
That's kind of what I was getting to. Like, where are you at now with? Are you able to like throw with your kid, or can you not throw at all anymore? Where are you at now?
I can throw. Yeah, absolutely. I just have, I have a weaker right hand because the nerve got disrupted.
Yeah.
The doctor did a great job of giving me as much functionality back as he could. But yeah, I can throw. Yeah, it's not real pretty.
You didn't try to start throwing left-handed or anything?
I've tried that, yeah. And I'm not bad, but not that great. I was coaching at Gorman with Nick a few years ago, and Greg's kid was on the team, Chase. And Greg would come out to the practices, and I would start throwing batting practice. And then after about 20 pitches, and I've hit 4 kids in the back in batting practice, he would have to relieve me. So technically, I've been relieved by Greg Maddox in batting practice. Yeah.
Beat it. Yeah.
So.
That's crazy. So basically the moral of the story is go play golf.
Don't be a pitcher. Yeah, it's funny. The late, oh my gosh, Tim Chambers had me come out and talk to Bryce Harper's dad because Bryce wanted to pitch. This is when he was at CSN.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Pitch. Sorry, Bryce really wants to pitch, and and again, I had to go out there and give him my story about getting hurt. So I'm like, hey, here's why you don't want to be a pitcher.
Yeah. When you can hit like Bryce, stay away from the mound, right? Yeah. Well, that's awesome. So tell us what I know we're kind of short on time with you today, so we'll kind of wrap it up pretty quickly here. But tell us what you're doing now with your medical stuff.
So I do knees, hips, and shoulders implants with doctors. So I work for a company that supplies the actual screws, the anchors that reattach the tissue for injuries like we were just talking about. I would say probably 30% of Major League Baseball players have one of our products probably in their body somewhere, or anybody that's been hurt in some type of sports related injury. So that's what I do. I work in the operating room with these doctors, and I work with the healthcare systems, and they buy it, and we help the doctors use new technology. It's a lot of fun, actually. I love it, and I get to see a lot of guys that have had similar injuries to myself, and I've learned that what's funny is, now that you say this, I've learned that most of the kids, it's just overuse.
Mm-hmm.
They got to come in, they give their story, and these orthopedics, these surgeons, they have Tim Soder, Tim in town, he works with a lot of them, and it's always the same story that most of these guys did too much, too early, too soon, and didn't listen to their body, and so that's what I do.
Okay. So what would you say your advice is to either parents, or if a kid's listening that say, that teenage kid, any advice for them?
That, what, nowadays there's so many opportunities to be seen that if you're not feeling strong, or if you're feeling a little, you're not feeling 100% and something hurts, and there's a scout tryout, or there's a showcase team game coming up, I mean, you know what, and you're scheduled to pitch, I would just hold off and wait until you feel better. There's going to come a time in your career where you're going to have to pitch through pain, but you should do it later, not earlier.
Okay.
I think that's, if that makes any sense, that advice, because I've seen so many parents just push their kids just because they, that opportunity is there and they don't want to miss it, and so they're pushing their kids to do it. Yeah. And I was one of them. I was taking, in high school, I was taking anti-inflammatories and pain meds just to pitch through some of the games, because there'd be 25, 30 scouts at the game. I mean, you were there, you were on the team, so you saw it, and so you want to miss the opportunity, and so you just pitch through the pain. Well, you know what? I paid for that later. So it's, sometimes it's not worth it. And I would listen to Greg. He and I would talk, Greg Maddox, and he would tell me some of the things that I would do. He's like, "Are you serious? Are you insane? You would do that? Why?" I'm like, "Well, it's your fault. I want to be like you." That's
yeah.
So, anyways.
Yeah, we're all trying to catch Greg, right? He's leading the way. So that's just really interesting. So looking back, do you have regrets over not speaking up about how you were, if you were pretty hurt, pretty sore, do you have regrets about that at all?
I do. Yep. There's a couple times that, a coach ask me to pitch, and he knew that I would pitch, you know, and I regret just not saying, you know what, you know, I shouldn't today. And, you know, and there's like a stigma there that you're a wuss, that you're, you know, you're not strong. And so, you know, and I fell victim to that. And it's very hard because any kid that's an athlete that's competitive is going to think the same way.
Yeah.
It takes a mature person. And then one time in professional baseball, actually in 1997, the year that, you know, I had a great year, that was, I was hurt several times, and I wish I would have just told the organization, guys, you know, I should not be pitching right now, but there's so much pressure there, you know, that I caved on that. So I think that any kid that can grasp that, when I say kid, a 17-year-old, an 18-year-old, you know, not just a 12-year-old, that I think that that's a wise decision. They can do that.
Okay. It's so true. Like as males, right? And as competitors, you're like, the last thing I want to be called is soft, right? Or not being tough. And if a coach asks me to go do it, like I'm going to go do it. So, but there's also, I think it's a coach's responsibility too, especially talking to a young kid. If they know like, hey, dude, that dude just pitched like 2 days ago and he threw 150 pitches, we should not ask him to throw today, right? I think that realize, and to not, as a coach, put kids in those positions. I think parents are getting better at that in regards to, no, he threw 2 days ago. Like he's out for 4 or 5 days. He'll be available next week, you know, basically.
Yeah, you know whose parents were really good at that was Joey Gallo's parents when he was over at Gorman.
Yeah.
Because that he could throw 97. I think you were there scouting at the time, you know, and his parents put the kibosh on that really fast.
Yeah, he didn't pitch at all his senior year, really. We used him maybe once during the regular year in a really important spot, and then more in like the playoffs and state is when Nick got him to throw a little bit more when we really needed him. Right. So, yeah. Well, awesome, man. This is great. Yeah, I wanted to bring you on because I knew you had some good information and good advice for parents and for kids that are going through it. It seems like the idea is to maybe just slow down, right? Slow down. So it's a long process. We're not making professional athletes here at 10 years old, right? Let them be kids. Let them enjoy it. Don't burn them out by the time they get to high school. I think that's kind of rampant going on around the game and everything. So hopefully that advice is taken a little bit here and coming from a guy like you that has been through it, done it, kind of wishes, man, I wish I would have dialed it back a little bit. So I appreciate you coming on board, man. It's been great.
Of course, man. Good to see you, Chad, and good luck to you, man. Hope you get back out on the field soon, huh?
Yeah, we're hoping.
Good seeing you, buddy.
All right, brother. We'll talk to you soon. Thanks for coming on. Take care. All right.